welcome everybody. We have just some of these topics of discussion have made it more difficult to plan timing for what we're trying to do. So just for sure, Senate File 3165 is on the bubble. It's an important department bill, even though this is the second time it's been posted. It will post it until we get through it. And that gives people more chance to read it. It's kind of long and interesting. If you've been paying any attention at all to anything in the media, you know there's a problem with staff shortages, and we're going to hear from Cardinal Minnesota as they've tragically and painfully have had to reduce their some of their beds that they have, and we're going to hear from the commissioner talking about some of their responses. But just this was on TV, I think, talking about sacrifice nursing, but just nursing shortages of staff. God bless Target. They're now paying $24. I shouldn't tell this group that. No, don't watch. They're paying $4 an hour. I don't know. That should. Anyway, I don't know. $24. And I really don't know, as the person charged with helping this discussion go forward, how we ever work to solve our challenges with that kind of a $10 difference from what we can pay now. So we really need to keep slogging through this and helping out, and to try to find some way to stem the tide on some of these closures that we've been talking about since September, but have been discussed as a looming problem for a period of years. So anyway, with that cheery start, and so we're going to, and just looking forward, hopefully we can spend not too much time on 3408. Senator Senjem is going to come and talk about trauma-informed services. Senator Nelson will be here, and then whatever happens at 2:20, we're going to move to Senator Rarick if we have to stop the discussion of something, and then we absolutely have to be out of here by about 2:35 because I have to go to a thing with Senator Tomasoni. Anyway, with that, welcome, Ms. Priggin. Are you here?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm here.
Well, welcome, and thanks for coming, and I appreciate you coming. It's got to be a really hard time for you. So take a few minutes and just, we haven't spoken lately, but just tell me what's going on and what you'd like us to know.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak more with you. Thank you for just your advocacy, your efforts in fostering this conversation. I'd like to just add some context to what I believe you discussed last week at the committee hearing regarding the closure of our homes. I'll talk a little bit today about our decision to close, what's happening with these individuals who've been impacted, and then certainly closing with what our future holds. And Senator Abler, your lovely headline that you showed already, the $24 an hour minimum increase that Target posted last night, was quite a shock. That will certainly add to the dynamic of this conversation, so thank you. I am Michelle Priggin. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Cardinal Minnesota. We provide waiver services to adults with disabilities. We currently operate 55 homes in the state of Minnesota and serve 80 clients through our in-home services. We have been experiencing some pretty extreme staffing shortages for several years, but it certainly has been exacerbated in the last couple of years. And we really saw the height of these workforce crisis in the summer of last year in 2021. We serve about 20,000 hours of client services every 2 weeks, and in July of 2021, we were seeing about 6,000 of those hours open or vacant due to workforce shortages. So that's a little over 30%, and which was really the worst that we had ever seen. We certainly have a commitment to high quality services and client safety, and that high of workforce vacancies really increased our risks and threats to being able to provide safe, happy, and healthy homes. We rely heavily on well-trained, well-paid, and well-rested staff, and it was becoming more and more evident that that was not happening. In 2021 December, we as an organization decided to mandate the COVID vaccine for our workforce, and that takes effect March 5th. And with that, we were projecting to lose an additional 50 employees. who were going to choose not to be vaccinated. So just looking at the trend in our workforce shortages, along with some projections for the future, we were at a point where we didn't think we could sustain this business model. We had tried other efforts in the past. I'm sure you've heard from other providers. We tried wage increases. We tried doubling our referral bonus. We implemented some sign-on bonuses for programs that were particularly short-staffed. We did a lot with trying to consolidate homes and staffing and increasing resources in our, HR recruitment and retention efforts. And none of that really seemed to make a difference or enough difference. And so we ultimately made a very difficult decision to downsize the organization to something that we felt like was more manageable, but also that we could really better ensure the safety, the health of our clients, and provide quality services to individuals in their homes. Individuals today, so of the 10 programs, 24 individuals are being impacted in some way. I do want to say that we have been fortunate, given the difficulty of this decision, in that almost all of the individuals have been able to, identify next steps post March 5th, the closing of these homes. 5 of the individuals of the 24, Cardinal is actually going to continue serving in some other way, either in one of our other homes or in another capacity. There were also 5 homes between Olmsted County and Winona County, which equates to 12 individuals that another provider in the area is taking over. And so that really ended up being a best case outcome in a really upsetting situation, because the individuals themselves don't have to pack and move, and their housemates are staying the same, and we've identified, or case managers have helped to identify some providers in the area that would take over those homes. With the exception of one individual who they are still undecided about what their loved one's next step is going to be. The other 23 individuals have identified next steps for services. And will largely be able to stay in their home community areas. Just looking at where we are now, what we're projecting in future, we believe that the downsizing will certainly make a difference to our workforce shortages. We are projecting a 10% vacancy in our workforce, again down from that 30% that we saw last summer. We believe that downsizing was a pretty drastic move, but also sort of a short-term bridge the gap decision to be able to remain sustainable as an organization, as a provider, and continue to serve as many people as possible. But I am certainly concerned, and I think I echo the voices of other providers in the state. We are concerned about being able to keep up with that, to be able to sustain that. To be able to keep up with rising costs of inflation, certainly how we decrease that widening pay gap that's happening, like Senator reported with Target. The way that our funding stream works, as I'm sure many of you are aware, it is very beneficial in the sense that the revenue stream is fairly predictable. It's fairly consistent. That's aided a lot in our financial success over the last 27 years. But now, when we are in an economic environment where providers are expected to be incredibly agile, that we need to be able to keep up with the rapid pace of wage increases and labor force expectations, providers don't have that same ability today. And our reimbursement rates are not keeping up with the rest of our communities. I think the New York Times reported early on that when they coined this time, the Great Resignation, that really it was going to come down to the organizations, the corporations that could pay the most, that would win through this labor force shortage. And that's what we want, is to be able to win in that battle, to continue to provide quality services to individuals with disabilities in the state of Minnesota. And so I look forward to hearing from you guys about how legislators can help with that, to help providers like Cardinal to be more viable and sustainable into the future by offering some higher wages for our workforce. With that, I will take questions if you guys have them, and I just so much thank you, and especially Senator Nelson, if she's on, thank you very much for her continued advocacy and support for Cardinal and this area.
Well, thank you. And there's some questions from members, but I think we can hear from the commissioner, then we'll talk about this as a package. That maybe some that'll help. We just have so many things to talk about today. So thank you very much, Ms. Pragan. That was like amazing how the challenges are. So, Commissioner, are you there? Do you want to say hello? And I see you've got a handout that looks like it's helpful. And then after that, we'll have some dialogue from members, starting with Senator Utke. So, Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Abler and members of the committee. I just want to say that I had a very good conversation yesterday with Ms. Pragan, and that she's making very thoughtful and careful decisions about her organization, and I appreciate what they're going through right now. So we have a slide deck here put together to show you the answers to the questions you asked me last week about what DHS does in moments like this when group homes announce that they're closing. So for the first slide. Resources available once we receive a 60-day notice of closure are that the current providers like Cardinal, whose homes are closing, are often the first champions for finding other placements for individuals. The county case manager has the legal accountability for finding services for individuals eligible for them. And DHS also has a community capacity team, which we mentioned last week, who receives all 60-day notices of closure and calls out to county case managers to be sure individuals have new placements. Next slide. The Disability Hub is available at all times online with information and resources for counties, families, and individuals. Our new ombudsman for people with disabilities is Bud Rosenfeld, and he's always available for conversation and support. And I just want to add that the proposals for standing up a new temporary staffing pool and other ideas under consideration at the legislature could prevent future closures. Next slide. Following up on some of the 2022 closures you've heard about, first of all, the 24 individuals served by Cardinal Homes, and you've already heard the report from them. 5 of the folks had their residence taken over by another provider, and they stayed in the same location. 16 had a plan for next steps that included a move to a new location at the time of our call. 2 people moved to another site owned by Cardinal, and 1, I believe, is remaining at Cardinal for an additional 1 or 2 months until another provider can take them. The 14 individuals who were served by ACR Homes, who gave notice of closure early in January, were 7 people who have identified new providers and are at various stages of making a decision or getting ready to move. 3 case managers have not responded to multiple calls from DHS. 2 people moved home, and 2 case managers have been in contact with us, talked through resources, no options yet identified for a move, but they know they can call us back if efforts to make a plan are not successful. In talking to my team, I understand that we do place calls to the county case managers. We let them know that we're available to help, but we don't always follow through to follow and understand what every single individual is planning to do, but the county knows that we're available. I have asked my team at this point in history, given what's going on in this marketplace, to follow through and to continue to talk to the county until they find what the stories are for each and every individual who's facing a closure of their service. And I will be tracking those on a regular basis as well to see how things are going in our in this sector of our work. Next slide. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, we have group home closures every year, just to give you a sense of the magnitude. The number of people with disabilities who are impacted by closure of services in the last 5 years, you can see the numbers for each of the last 5 years, and the average has been 69 people per year. My team was also able to pull together from our licensing division this chart looking over the past 12 quarters. These are quarters, not years. You can see the opened licenses in blue, the closed licenses in yellow with the net. And you can see that the first time that the net went to the negative and there were more closures than open licenses was in the 4th quarter of 2021. And I've just reported to you on the closure activity of 2 larger providers in the 1st quarter of 2022, which we don't have the data for yet. But it is concerning that this chart has switched to the negative, and we'll be paying very close attention to it as we go through 2022 to see what's happening with our licensed providers. And finally, I just want to reiterate that proposals for standing up a new temporary staffing pool and other ideas under consideration at the legislature could prevent future closures. The waiver bill to allow new employees to work under supervision while awaiting background checks and a new deadline for statewide completion of all background checks would also help. Our new rollout, soon to be announced, of electronic visit verification, min choices, community first services and supports, and waiver reimagined would also reduce pressure on understaffed services. And that is all I have for today. I can answer questions if you have any.
Very good. Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question goes back to Ms. Priggen, and that is with the 10 group homes that you just closed, how many employees would it take to operate those?
Ms. Priggen.
I'm sorry, Senator, I don't have that information exactly. It is a combination of part-time and full-time staff. Those homes, when we provide 24/7, 365 services to more than one individual in a home, there's some shared staffing, some double staffing there. We average about 250 hours a week of services per location.
Senator Rarick.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess the reason I ask that is we know how hard it is, the times that you're operating in, et cetera, but the one number that you gave out earlier that jumped out at me and is very concerning is the fact that you let go or lost 50 employees due to a vaccine mandate that you implemented. So I have a little bit of a hard time listening to the, we know that everybody's short-staffed, but as I look at that, you created a little bit of it yourself, and you're not the only one. Others are doing the same thing, but that to me is a concerning issue, and I know that now it's passed. You're moving forward, and you've got a plan to be able to staff the remaining homes. But and this is more to across the whole state. We've in some cases created some of these problems that have created. They've gotten worse because of actions that we've taken in our management roles, and I just wanted to point that out. It's concerning to me. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Ms. Priggen, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I appreciate that, and I do want to be honest and transparent about the decisions that we've made, and I certainly see that the decision to mandate the vaccine was part of that. I think, again, in the name of transparency, want to disclose that to elected officials, to anybody, particularly DHS as well, who is trying to understand our situation. And I hope that Cardinal's decision to do that wouldn't detract from the conversation around the workforce crises that providers like Cardinal are experiencing, and the real need to continue to support our industry, our sector, and our workforce to be able to sustain services like this moving forward.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Priggen, my question is for you as well. And I just want to thank you for your leadership. I know these are difficult decisions, and I want to acknowledge that. I wanted to ask a little bit about, well, first I wanted to thank the Commissioner for the call yesterday in response to my concerns, and for the information you've provided to the committee today about the Disability Hub and the ombudsperson. And I wanted to know, Ms. Priggen, when you had to make that difficult decision to close those homes because there was not enough staffing to keep them open, were you or your clients, do you know, did you know about the Disability Hub and the ombudsperson? I'm just trying to get a sense of if these state resources actually got to the people that needed to access them, to go
Good
through this
question.
transition.
Ms. Priggin?
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we certainly have used the Ombudsman Regional Office as it relates to individual client concerns. We see them in some of the support team meetings where we're having discussions about programming and planning and so forth. As it related to avoiding a home closure and or identifying next steps, they, I believe, were not part of, at least Cardinal, I don't know if they had conversations privately with case managers who were really helping to identify next steps for these individuals. I think the community capacity team that the commissioner talked about last week, that as well, I was not aware of that, but my understanding is that they have worked primarily with the case managers in identifying next steps for those individuals.
Thank you, Ms. Priggin.
That was a really good question. I think a resource that nobody knows about,
Yeah.
it's not a resource. Senator Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is the point. A disability hub or a capacity building team, or sometimes we are guilty of that in the legislative arena. We have resources, we put out resources, but the point is if the people who would benefit from them don't know about them, it doesn't really help. And Commissioner, that's something I'd like to hear from you about, is how did the disability hub, the capacity building team, and the ombudsperson contact, did that information get, how did your department distribute that information? So we know that Cardinal, we don't know, maybe you can add some light to that. And also then about the 14 individuals served at the ACR homes. Where did those resources get into the hands of the people who needed to find new places to live?
Yeah, Senator Nelson, I think that's too big a question for today. If
Okay.
you could do me a favor and take that offline and explore that a bit.
I will.
And we can come back with like news. We have a lot of stuff to do today, including one
Yes.
of your bills.
Yes.
But I think it's a really valid question. And I mean, we could spend the whole time on this again. But Senator Murphy has a question that's going to be remember, it's sweeps weeks. We're the #1 rated Senate committee. Do that, Senator Murphy? So I think this should, upscale all the quality of our questions. And so just putting our A team forward, Senator Murphy.
Well, Mr. Chair, you're adding a lot of pressure to what is a fairly innocuous comment.
Oh.
So, sorry about that part. Sort of let you down right at the start. I do think that this is a really important issue for this committee. The staffing issues in group homes and nursing homes and childcare, those critical sectors that we have responsibility for, really, really important. I did want to share from my perspective as a provider. I just renewed my license yesterday. It's so much fun. It's so easy to do. That the issue that Senator Uckey was raising, I appreciate and hear it, but as I have talked with providers through the course of this pandemic, I think there are providers who stepped back because of the mandate. We know about that. And I think there would have been providers who would have stepped back had there not been a mandate. And where we can probably agree as a committee is that COVID and that virus have been very difficult on settings like group homes and nursing homes, et cetera. And our focus should be there, I hope, in making sure that there are adequate staff in place to care for people. I don't know if that's a blockbuster, but there you go.
Senator Murphy, again, nothing but the most stellar people on this committee, and so you definitely rose to the challenge. And but seriously, this is just a big deal. And a lot of us were concerned that the mandate might have an effect, and we couldn't quantify it, and now we're beginning to see some. And this committee is not going to resolve that, but I think it's just worthy of note. And just to kind of wrap up my comments, and I'll let the commissioner have the last word, but like the staffing pool, just want to point out, 8 days ago, we passed it off the Senate floor thinking this was an emergency. We could actually use these people to come and help, and I believe it's sitting quietly in Ways and Means in the other body. And so with one of the waivers, every waiver you mentioned, Commissioner, is sitting over there waiting to be acted upon. And so I cannot wait to concur with what I think is pretty close to an agreement. So there's no disagreements on the part of the Senate to the viewing public about getting that money out the door. So I think it's time for that. And I guess that's the biggest thing I would say. I just also want to point out, just as I was reading the numbers here, Commissioner, and then you can reply to that and whatever else, and it's, as I look at 18 and 19, 59, 103 closures, et cetera, the difference then was there were actually places that had capacity. There was workforce everywhere. Everybody was not in a crisis mode. At this point, everybody's in a crisis mode. We're 2 months into a new year, and we're already at 59 this year. And so that's the call of alarm I see. And so, Commissioner, I know you share that. So if you want to take a minute to have a last comment, Commissioner, I would be great, and if that's enough time for you to finish up.
Chair Abler and committee members, thank you very much for those comments. I agree with you. The number that we've seen already in 2022 is alarming, and that's why I'm also going to ask my team to keep me posted on all closure notices that we receive going forward, and we will keep you posted on what that looks like. I am pleased that with the processes we have in place, we have no information that anyone has fallen through the cracks. And you're right, so far we've had other providers with capacity who could take folks into their services and make sure their services continue uninterrupted. But I don't know how long that will last. And so it'll be very good for us to be looking at alternatives to see what we can do to shore up this whole sector of our human services.
Well, thank you. And Commissioner, I hope that you sense the tone from this committee is that of cooperative. We got a real crisis on our hands, and we're doing what we can. We passed $322 million out to try to get some retention. Senator Senjem, why don't you come up to the table while we're getting ready? That's sitting, going to finance this week, and hopefully all the sectors of the legislature can get together on that. So, Ms. Prigge, Ms. Priggen, thank you so much for coming. You know, God bless your work still. And so I'm just nervous this is the beginning, not the end of the challenges. Mayo Clinic, Senator Senjem had $1.2 billion in profits last year. So some industries are doing well. That is not true of the one we represent. So that's not your topic. So just thought I'd give a shout out to the Mayo Clinic and happy for their success. Senator Utke will move Senate File 3408. Actually, Senator Nelson should probably move since she's a Rochester person.
I'll be glad to move, Senator.
And we're going to hear it and then lay it over. So Senator Senjem, welcome to the committee. And remember, it is sweeps week, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members. You have a lot of important things coming for your body, and I think this one is as well. This, Mr. Chair and members, deals with youth sexual trafficking and exploitation. Probably, at least in my world, one of the most profoundly disgusting things we could even think about in a civil society, but it happens. It happens in my community, probably happens in your community, and I can only describe it as, in my words, sickening, but this bill attempts to at least address some of this, albeit a legal activity. It does happen, as I mentioned, and so what are we going to do about it? This, again, bill hopes to at least begin a process of doing more about it than we're already doing. So, Mr. Chair, this Bill 3470 is, again, about a study and about them funding some activities related to this whole activity from the standpoint of supporting remediation and supporting victims of sexual exploitation. So I'll just start, Mr. Chair. Subdivision 4, just about funding, simply says that these funds need to be used appropriately in accordance with the document, and I think that's what we expect it to be. Section 2 does deal with a sexual exploitation trafficking study. It's a prevalent study, meaning it's a one-time study. It's $300,000. It will give us a much better handle than we perhaps have today about what the extent of this problem is. I think we all kind of know about it by word of mouth and just information that we get from various sources. Again, it's real. It happens. I, Mr. Chair, just have gotten a lot of information, at least in my community, the Sisters of St. Francis of Assisi, have been very active over the years in promoting community conversations about this, and I suspect people like those Catholic sisters and other areas of the state, as well as other people, have talked about it as well at various venues. So again, the first part of it deals with a prevalence study. Secondly, in section 4, it deals with okay, what are we going to do about it? This would propose to put $9 million in fiscal year 2023 from the general fund into human services grants that would have to do with street outreach, emergency shelters, transition, long-term housing beds for these youths. And then secondly, in subdivision 2 of that, $9 million from the commissioner to the Commissioner of Health for activities related to this from a more health perspective. And then subdivision 3, a so-called safe harbor navigating regional navigators proposal, which again will there are 6 such regions around the state of Minnesota, and it would put $2 million into good work that they would do more regionally on this problem, setting goals, objectives, and providing regional accountability for addressing this issue. So that's the essence of the bill, Mr. Chair and members, and I would, at your pleasure, like to move on to my witness, Ms. Holger, and she will speak when you're ready.
Well, thank you, Senator Senjem, and stellar introduction, very much in keeping with the quality we would expected our testifiers to have. And Ms. Holger, feel the pressure, but and I just have to get off that jag. But this work we do here is so serious every day. And what challenge is it today? And the tragedy of what you're going to bring to us is just like, makes you want to cry. So that's why I try to laugh once in a while. But it's a big deal. And Ms. Holger, welcome to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Abler and members of the committee, for taking the time to hear Senate File 3470 today. We know you're busy. I also want to sincerely thank our chief author, Senator Senjem, who has consistently supported victims of sex trafficking in our state, in his community, and with Safe Harbor Law, along with many of you on this committee. I recognize a lot of very friendly and supportive faces, so thank you, including you, Chief, or Chair. My name is Beth Holger, and I am the CEO of The Link. The Link is a youth and adult-led nonprofit based in North Minneapolis that provides emergency shelter, housing, and services for youth and young families experiencing homelessness, who have been victims of sex trafficking, or who are involved in the child protection or juvenile justice system. We also are a key partner, I should say a partner, within the state of Minnesota's Safe Harbor Law. Although we are based in North Minneapolis, we serve victims of sex trafficking from all over the state. Inner city, suburbs, rural areas, and reservation or tribal communities, because unfortunately sex trafficking happens in every community across our state. I am also here as one of the policy committee co-chairs for the Youth Services Network, which is a statewide coalition of youth-serving agencies that provide support for youth and young families experiencing homelessness or sexual exploitation. It goes without saying, as Chair Abler just mentioned, it goes without saying that the sale of our children in Minnesota should never happen. It's disgusting and horrible. I know it's hard to believe that it happens in our state, but it does. The average age of entry into being sex trafficked is really young, just 12 to 14 years old, and I can attest to that because of the youth that we see at the Link every day, and young people who are as young as 13 and 14 who are currently in our emergency shelter called Passageways for Sex Trafficked Youth, as we sit here and speak. So although we have never had a statewide prevalence study done in our state, to determine the actual total number of victims across our state, we know sex trafficking is a big issue here. In 2019, the Minnesota Student Survey found that 5,000 Minnesota 9th and 11th graders had been sexually exploited. And that is by far an underestimate because it only represents 2 grades, and it also only represents the students that were in school to be able to take that survey. Oftentimes trafficked youth aren't going to school regularly. And also it kind of speaks to whether or not they feel comfortable enough answering that kind of question. So if anything, it's an undercount. The Link, I can say for us, just being one service provider across the state for Safe Harbor, we served 134 unduplicated victims of sex trafficking in 2021 alone. So there definitely is an issue. But the good thing is that there is a lot of hope in our state for victims of sex trafficking. You helped us pass our Safe Harbor Law back in 2011, which decriminalizes prostitution offenses for youth under the age of 18, and it provides safe and trauma-informed services, shelter, and housing programs to help these incredible young people of our state to accomplish the goals they have for themselves and to achieve safety and escape from trafficking. We're so grateful for the amazing progress that's been made to all of you, but our youth need more. On behalf of the Youth Services Network, we are asking for one-time funds, as the Senator said, for $300,000 for a prevalence study to really determine the true number of sex trafficking victims in our state and to be able to build out our supports better based on that for youth and for adult victims of trafficking. We are also asking for an increase of $9 million for additional street outreach, emergency shelter beds, and housing units for these youth, an additional $9 million for supportive services like the critically needed mental health therapy, healthcare services, and legal services for these young victims. And we also need an additional $2 million to expand the Safe Harbor Regional Navigator Program. All of these investments would provide our state with the opportunity to get additional victims of sex trafficking into safety, out of trafficking, and where in a place where they can truly heal and accomplish the goals that they have for themselves. We also know that this is a good investment. It's not only the right thing to do, but it's a good investment. According to a cost-benefit analysis study done by the University of Minnesota in 2012, there is a $34 return on investment for every $1 of government funds used to support victims of sex trafficking. We also know that the Safe Harbor Law and No Wrong Door response works because there's been an evaluation done in 2017, between 2017 and 2019 by the Wilder Research Center. They found that there was a total of 1,279 youth served through the Safe Harbor statewide grantee network. And 97% of these youth self-reported positive changes in their life after receiving Safe Harbor services. 100% felt more prepared to reach their educational goals, and 89% felt more prepared to support themselves in a financially safe and legal way. I also know that this works because I get the opportunity and great honor to see it every day and every night. We're open 365 a year, so I can really relate to some of the earlier testimony about staffing shortages. What I will say is these young people are not what you see necessarily in the media. They are amazing. They're our children. They are resilient, and they have all kinds of things they want to do with their lives. So I'm just urging you, please, on the behalf of the Youth Services Network and on behalf of these young people, to utilize some of these surplus dollars to invest in the safety and future of these youth. And I really appreciate the time. Thank
Well,
you.
that's very enlightening. Thank you very much. Let's finish the testimony, then we'll do some questions. Ms. Brannick, are you there? You're online, I think. Welcome to the committee. There you
Oh,
are.
yes, I am here.
Hi there.
Good afternoon, Chair Abler and members. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. My name is Holly Brannick, and I am the lead Safe Harbor lead case manager for Lutheran Social Service of Minnesota, Rochester Youth Services. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm here today to express our support for Senate File 3470. As you have heard already, Safe Harbor is a critical set of services for young people who are sexually exploited or involved in sex trafficking. At LSS Youth Services, our approach is trauma-informed and client-centered, with individualized and youth-directed planning. Developing trust with youth who have experienced sex trafficking and sexual exploitation takes time, a significant amount of time, and patience. With our current Safe Harbor grant from DHS, we provide intensive case management and supportive housing for youth who are escaping sex trafficking. In the last year, our program has worked with 10 youth, and we know the need is even greater. That is why I'm happy to see that SF 3470 includes a prevalence study so we can learn the extent of the problem. Working with youth who have experienced homelessness, we know the issue of sex trafficking is pervasive, and youth often do not share their stories of sexual exploitation right away. Youth often do not recognize that their experience is exploitation and trafficking, for example, in the event of survival sex. This is why our work in building trusting relationships with youth is so very important. I would like to share one story of a youth. I'm going to call her Sarah. Sarah was born in Africa and raised by her grandmother until the age of 11. when her grandmother passed away. She was sent to live with her father. Her father physically, emotionally, and sexually abused her. Her father was also her trafficker. Sarah came to the U.S. when she was around 16 with her father and family. Sarah confided in an adult she trusted that she met at school. That adult still plays a huge role in her life to this day. Sarah was introduced to our program almost 2 years ago. Sarah was our first Safe Harbor housing participant. In the 2 years I have spent working with Sarah, I have been amazed and inspired by her spirit and her resiliency. Through this funding, LSS has been able to help Sarah get and stay stably housed for 18 months. I have been working with her to develop independent living skills. She's currently working on getting her GED and finding employment. I want to point out that while Sarah's trafficking did occur in Africa, trafficking and exploitation is just as prevalent here in the US, in Minnesota, including right here in Rochester. This is just one story among many. We know there are many more youth who would benefit from Safe Harbor services, and I encourage you to support the increased Safe Harbor funding that is included in this bill. Every time we help one youth end their involvement with sex trafficking is an important step to stability for that youth and for our community. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Ms. Brannick, and actually there's a whole ripple effect around every one of these, these young people as they get challenged, they've got a support system or not, and helping one can maybe, just a good testimony. Helping one can help a whole bunch of people, maybe even a whole neighborhood. So anyway, are questions or comments from members? Senator Benson.
Mr. Chair, and to Senator Senjem and the testifiers, this is a difficult topic to say the least, and we have had Safe Harbor grants managed through the Department of Health. We also have about $11 million going to youth homelessness already, and so I just want to know how this bill is going to work with the existing Safe Harbor and the existing youth homelessness grants.
Senator Benson, sometimes you and I think so alike, it gets a little frightening. So I was just thinking, just in terms of additional homework, and that's a compliment to you. Anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So to the to the testifiers, maybe it'd be helpful if we're going to do a little more work on this. We'd actually have a report from the departments about what we currently have, and so maybe somebody could provide that to the committee. But maybe Ms. Holger, offhand at least a partial answer to that.
Thank you, Chair, for the question, as well as Senator Benson. Appreciate the question. And I oftentimes get asked this question because I've worked for 23 years now, both with youth who have lived experience of homelessness or trafficking. And so what I've learned through my career, mainly from the young people, is that sex trafficking is a very specific type of trauma that needs a specific type of response. There's a lot of different kinds of safety issues and trauma and violence that occur when a victim's trafficked. And so we wanted to create a different response for them than a young person who's experienced homelessness. Not saying that homelessness isn't traumatic, it's also traumatic, but it's a different type of trauma. So the Homeless Youth Act provides a continuum of services for youth who have been experiencing homelessness to get them out of homelessness. I will say it also helps prevent them from becoming trafficking victims, because oftentimes traffickers do tend to lure young people who are run away from home or homeless. So another good aspect of the Homeless Youth Act is that the hope is that it prevents them from becoming trafficked if we can provide a safe shelter or home for them before being approached by a trafficker on the street. We have about 4,800 youth on any given night in Minnesota that are experiencing homelessness. So we absolutely are so thankful for the investment that we currently have of the $11.238 million. That is a huge progress. It's helped us to expand services across the state, in Anoka County, in Rochester, across the state, which is wonderful, but we still have some more work to do to be able to serve all of those young people and reduce and stop this homelessness from happening. And in terms of trafficking, like I said, we really do need a prevalence study to determine the actual number per day like we have for youth homelessness. But either way, we do know that there's a waiting list right now at the link to get into our programs for housing. We know that we don't have the capacity to serve all the victims that are being trafficked, and so we absolutely want to increase the amount that we have. So the way it would work is just that it would infuse additional resources so that we could help more victims out of sex trafficking. Because right now, unfortunately, even though we have made investments, they're just not enough to serve all the youth that need it. So I
Senator
hope that
Benson.
makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I see this does need to go to Senator Etke's committee. And so if it's going to be moved out, then I think some work looking at existing pools of funding, existing resources, and how these all mesh.
Commissioner of Health. I wasn't thinking we were voting, but we could certainly move it to there and the work could continue. I think is that okay, Senator Huckey? We'll send it to you. Okay. Other questions from members or comments? Senator Senjem, it sounds like we're in a movie out of town here, so you won't be back here in this bill. But and it's a pretty good committee, I have to say. It's fine.
Senator Upke is my neighbor.
Not the
so
number one rated committee, Senator Senjem.
We're pretty cordial up there.
Senator Senjem, get the last word then. So take the last word, Senator Senjem.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members, for hearing this bill today. It's a profoundly important topic. I think we all know this. It's deeply disappointing that we even have to talk about this. I'm reminded, as about a week ago, I called my own police chief as what's going on, and he described a situation where a young daughter forced into this by virtue of the threat, that the fact there were threats on her mother, and if she didn't do it, and can you imagine that kind of a life and that kind of a trauma that this young lady is experiencing because she's caught in this trap. And so those traps are all over. We know that. This bill hopes to identify some resources and support for those kind of situations. Mr. Chair and members, again, we need to step up to this in the strongest possible way. And this bill, be it perhaps needs some massaging, they all do, but certainly happy to do that and hope we can move it on.
Thank you. And some of the, Senator Hoffman, briefly.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted, maybe this is a time, because there's some other trafficking bills that we out there. Jennifer Sommerfeld should provide some technical assistance that would be helpful in how we align some of these things up within the two committees. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Sure.
Especially on the child protection side and how to better serve the victims. I mean,
And Senator Senjem, I have good news. I believe you got a volunteer to help you with this bill along the way. So thanks, Senator Hoffman, for volunteering to help. That's just so thoughtful of you.
Perhaps Jennifer Sommerfeld at the Department of Human Services could provide technical assistance, Senator. I'm just throwing that at you since we are the number one watch
volunteering to be a part of that process. So Senator Senjem, looks like you're a co-author. No, that's the other bill. So anyway, thank you. And so the best tragedies are the ones that never happen. And so we heard about some earlier that we're heading off with housing issues and this whole thing. So I think it's a very excellent topic. And so with that, Senator Nelson moves that the bill be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services, Finance and Policy. Everybody understand that motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So there you go. Very nice. Thank you very much. Senator Utke.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have before us Senate File 3408.
And I believe you have an amendment, Senator Utke?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the A1 amendment.
Senator Utke moves the A1 amendment. Why don't you explain it for us, please?
Okay, sure. If you look at the amendment, it goes back to page 4, and what it's doing is taking out the new language under the section that's the provider reinvention grants. And the reason that we're making this change here today is if this section, of course, affects the grants, and if we follow through and do this, we have a fiscal note of $95,000, and we don't need that. There shouldn't be any cost to this. So under subdivision 7, which is page 4, 4.1 through 4.31, we are removing the new language and reinstating the stricken language, that section only, because of the grants.
Everybody understand the amendment? I think it's a good amendment because we were trying to focus on the task force in particular. And anyway, Pobrenes, anybody have any questions about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment's adopted. Senator Upke, and we have a couple testifiers. And I thought this would be more of a technical hearing, but I'm happy to hear from, a few people that want to comment about it. But if they could, when we finally get to that, if they can keep their remarks kind of pointed and brief, that would be very helpful. Senator Upke to the bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And if members, you think you've seen this before, you have. We've had it here in the form of an amendment. It was included in Senator Abler's bill that has passed off the Senate floor. And now we're bringing it back to also run it as an individual bill. And it just has to do with the title says it all. It's modifying the membership and the duties of the task force on the subminimum wage. And we've had a number of conversations about this because of the work groups and the meetings we had this past fall. The language that got passed last June or first couple days of July included this work group, and it, to me, was extremely harsh. It just said their task was to eliminate the subminimum wages. We want to change that a little bit, and as the whole bill reads, it's promote independence and increase opportunities for people with disabilities to earn competitive wages. We need to get rid of the elimination part of it, because there are a limited number of Minnesotans who depend on these jobs, want these jobs, do not want to lose their jobs. And if this went forward and it was strictly a task force to study and bring back a proposal on eliminating subminimum wage, they would lose their jobs. So, and then the other piece is adding 4 members to the task force. And again, that was adding a member, at least hopefully one that is currently being paid subminimum wage, and then 3 members that are parents or guardians. Just expanding the amount of information that will come forth to look at this and hopefully come up with a good idea. We're all about promoting independence, but we do have a certain number of people that it fits their needs, it's what they want to do, and they are very concerned that we would be eliminating their job, and that's very concerning. So with that, Mr. Chair, let's hear from our testifiers, and if there's any quick follow-up, but we've all talked about this quite a bit.
Thanks. And so the people watching, I think the committee is fully aware, this was a project that came out of a COVID-related, process, and I think had there been a broader discussion, there would have been more of a consensus bill. And so I think that, anyway, I think this is going in a good direction. Mr. McCourt, you're here. If you could offer maybe a minute and a half of your thoughts, that'd be great. Welcome to the committee, and nice to have you here. Are you there?
Thank you, Senator Abler. I just wanted to weigh in today and to express my concerns about this bill. As many are aware, Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act allows people with disabilities to be paid under minimum wage. That law was passed in 1938, and it really has become a practice that is, in a 21st century economy where we value people based on their skills, is no longer necessary. There's many different types of employment that DHS and other providers have come up with, such as adaptive employment, customized employment, and really being able to find people jobs based on their skills and their ability levels. Paying people pennies to the dollar is, in my mind, simply exploitive. And this bill really is a consensus bill. This is a bill that came through probably every single advocacy group. It came through every single agency, including the Department of Labor and DHS. And if this bill is amended, then Senator Utke is absolutely right. People are going to lose their jobs. What this bill is meant to do, what the original intent of the bill was meant to do, was meant to come up with a plan so that we preserve these programs so people don't lose their jobs. Because whether we like it or not, the subminimum wage is going away. It has been in every single minimum wage bill. It is a top priority for the Biden administration to get rid of the subminimum wage. And so it's going, and I'm sure that you're being told that it's not going, and that there is no threat of litigation. But I'm here to tell you that there is, and that there are already public interest firms that are already looking at Minnesota for the sole reason that we over rely on the subminimum wage, and that the funding models that we use are simply unequal. And so I have extreme concerns about the direction this bill is going. I think it is a significant affront to the rights of persons with disabilities, particularly in the labor force. And I would encourage the committee to stay with the language that we already have.
Okay.
We've seen litigation and the impact of litigation in New Hampshire and Oregon and Vermont. And what the feds do is they just
Mr. McCord, if you can kind of wrap it up, I've given you 3 minutes, so please just conclude. You've made a good point, so.
And in this particular industry, of particular concern is that if we don't have a plan in place where we also have a provider shortage, people aren't just going to end up sitting on the couch with no program. They're going to end up in nursing homes. And so I strongly encourage the committee to stick with the language as it is and to continue in a fashion that's creating a more inclusive labor force in which people can be valued by their skills and abilities,
Okay.
and just for the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCord. I appreciate it. Ms. Holden, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Abler, and hello, members. My name is Martin Holden. I'm with Legal Aid, which includes the Minnesota Disability Law Center. It is really great to see all of you in person. Thanks for the chance to be here today. And Senator Uckey and Senator Abler, we've had a lot of really, I think, productive conversations about this, and I've been really grateful for your openness. And, you know, I think when we spoke in November, Senator Uckey, we really did see eye to eye on that we don't want the things that people do right now to go away. But for us, we see that as the purpose of this task force, as Mr. McCourt said, that without this task force, we do run the risk of what people have been doing, using providers using 14C certificates to change at the drop of a hat. And that what this task force really does is give us the chance to make a really good plan. And part of why we think we need that plan is that this is a civil rights issue, that folks across Minnesota who have disabilities do deserve to be paid the same as people who don't have disabilities. And although we have fantastic disability services in our state, this is one area where we are really behind. If you look at the Department of Labor statistics about the use of these certificates, we are the third highest user in the country. The only two states above us are Illinois and California, far more populous states than us. If you look at statistics here in Minnesota, 11% of people who have intellectual disabilities are in integrated employment. Nationally, that's 20%. So we're halfway behind the rest of the country already on employing people who have disabilities. And we actually spend 10 times as much on facility-based work as we do on integrated employment. So this task force is exactly what we need to figure out how to help providers to move away from this model so that, yeah, people who are being paid for those jobs now can get paid minimum wage for their work. That may mean that providers need to change their business models, but there are grants for that. That may mean that we need to look at the rates that we use for disability day programming, but that's what the task force is going to do. And we really think that now is the time because of the workforce shortage. We have underemployed folks with disabilities across our state who could be filling jobs that are unfilled in every industry, who simply haven't been given the chance to figure out what they're good at, what they like to do, and how they can contribute to society. So we really appreciate all the discussion about this and just wanted to come to, again, say why we think this is so important now and why we think the current purpose of the task force is what we should stick with.
Well, Ms. Holden, thank you, and I'll let Senator Uckey go in a second. I want to point out that the ARC, Awesome, and Legal Aid wrote comments as well, so people should check out those. And I think I don't think I disagree with one word you said, because we think alike. But I think the syntax and the grammar in the charge of the task force excludes that there's some individuals, if you consider, there's a whole bell curve of individuals that would fall into this category. And maybe we should get more of the ones that have more opportunity capacity to get out the door, which you and I agree with. We've been talking about that over and over at this committee. How do we get more independence? We really mean it. But there's a slice of the individuals for whom there is not really a viable other option. And as we heard from Cardinal Healthcare, I'm concerned that if it's, when the challenge gets, they're just going to close the door and they're going to sit in a group home all day, except there won't be any group home to go to. And so that's the challenge. And I think to encourage the folks with concerns, I really think it's just a matter of how are we going to say what we're trying to accomplish. But I think just the certainty of eliminating it by then, I'm concerned as well. And that's why I got behind this in the beginning as a thought. And it actually was negotiated on my phone, which was not a good way to read. You miss the word "not" once in a while and those kinds of dialogues. And so I think it's just simply that. It's friendly, but sometimes how you ask a question matters. That's really what I think we're about. And Senator Utke, and then we'll take any questions from members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, just a couple quick follow-ups. That the bill, the language that is currently in law that was passed this past summer doesn't give it any wiggle room. It says that the study is to eliminate the subminimum wage. All those who signed up with the Department of Human Services online had to agree with eliminating subminimum wage. It doesn't give them the option to study and come back with a great recommendation. So that's what this is about, is to let them actually do their job. We want them to look at it. What other options are out there? How can we handle things differently? And, you know, for me, yeah, there's a lot of people that talk about this, but I can go back home and there's specific clients at our local agencies that they're the ones that come forward and just plead with us to not eliminate their job. They love what they do. And if we said that this was to go forward and we eliminated subminimum wages, their job is gone. Or I just heard, and I would just like to talk just briefly, and I'll keep it really quick, but change the business model and live off of grants or additional grants. That's fine, but we're struggling to pay people what they're getting today. And if the time comes that there's even, let's say, a shortfall in funding or whatever, those are grants that are easy to discontinue. And now those people will totally be out on the street again. That's why I don't entertain or haven't talked about that, because I don't feel that's viable at all. But just all we're trying to do is help these people. They're a small number that love their job, and we just want them to have the option to keep it and let them work with their providers to find the best possible way to do it. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator. Ms. Grom has a comment about the fiscal note, and you saw we took out that one section, so that's certainly going to change it. But Ms. Grom, you wanted to comment about anything, so welcome. Hello again.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, my name is Christy Grom. I always appreciate the opportunity to participate in your committee. Will comment briefly about the fiscal note. I don't believe that the amendment actually changes the full cost, the full fiscal impact. I would have to defer to my colleague Elise Bailey to talk more about that, but wanted to give the committee a heads up on that. And I also did have a few issues I wanted to raise with the committee on the bill itself.
So why don't you talk about your concerns, then we'll take the fiscal note discussion offline. This is going to go to state government.
Sure.
So. Okay, go ahead. So yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, I do appreciate your work on this and certainly your interest in the topic. Hopefully we can continue to work together and work through maybe where we might have some differences and create some compromise. So I'll start with the good news. It's not all just concerns. We don't have major policy concerns about the changes in membership of the task force. With or without this bill, we're already using the funding to work with our communications expert who's helping us connect with stakeholders, whether they're folks that do or don't support the eventual phase out of subminimum wage, to make sure that we capture those perspectives and that we document them in the report to the legislature that's due, I believe, next year. There are a couple of operational issues with the membership changes that we can work through in terms of timelines, but we can work through those with Senator Utke. In terms of the concerns that we do have some significant concerns about the change in the purpose of the task force. So first, From an operational perspective, this bill would require us to redo all of our work plans or orientation materials, many other documents that we've been working on for months that were developed for the task force. So that would certainly cause additional work for the department, and that's reflected in the fiscal note. The changes to the reinvention grants are certainly appreciated. We wouldn't have to do the additional work that the bill previously would have required without that amendment. The second issue I just wanted to raise is that the task force is funded with HCBS enhanced FMAP dollars, which most of us here know in this committee very well have a very specific purpose. The federal government requires us to use those dollars to really accelerate reforms and to innovate in the area of long-term services and support. But the changes related to the task force don't really align with that purpose. Instead, we're essentially codifying what we already do. So we already have multiple venues where we discuss and plan for competitive employment. We actually have, as you know well, state laws that require us to comply with the state's employment first policy. So there's some concern that the scope changes wouldn't align with the allowable uses of, or certainly the spirit of those allowable uses under the HCBS FMAP laws. And then lastly, we do as a department believe that now is the time to begin this discussion and to work with the community to make a plan. Just wanted to clarify that the bill doesn't require us to phase out subminimum wage. It just requires that we plan for the phase out of it should it happen. So this is one area, as Ms. Holden mentioned and Mr. McCourt mentioned, that Minnesota is not a leader, unfortunately. We have one of the highest rates of reliance on subminimum wages in the nation. And we really do need to be prepared should the federal government make changes, or should there be funding opportunities available at the federal level for states perhaps who are working to phase out subminimum wages. So never a bad thing to be prepared. At the department, we've been preparing for quite a while with some of our day services reforms. So we've heard from concerns from folks that there won't be options for people if subminimum wages are phased out, and that's simply not true. We have a new service called Day Support, and many people are using that service. It's a service for people that might not want to work or might just want to work minimally or test out some different employment skills. But under this service, people can still get those social connections and have meaningful activities during the day. And that's something that Medicaid reimburses for. That's part of our waiver plan services. And so I'll just end trying to be brief here, noting that we are, at the department overall, very interested in supporting people through our programs to meet their basic needs. We believe that all people are worthy of dignity and all that goes along with, that dignity that goes along with having enough income to support themselves. And for us, the employment first policy isn't just a box that we check off. It's something that we truly believe in. We truly believe that people with disabilities can and want to participate in the workforce. They might not want to sort widgets in a box, but they certainly want to participate in the workforce and are quite capable of making extraordinary contributions, oftentimes with our support and helping them find the right jobs. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to share a perspective with you. Happy to continue this conversation.
Okay, well, thank you. And so when you do the fiscal note, if you could separate out the staff part from the policy part, that's interesting.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Uckey.
Could I just add one quick thing? Ms. Grom would she mentioned that they have a work plan, et cetera, put together already. If I could get a copy of that offline so that we can see what that entails, so I can, follow up, because there's things in here that don't quite follow the narrative that I'm hearing, and I'd like to see it. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the thoughtful discussion. And just to add to that thoughtful discussion, Senator Wickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I had been listening, last summer, fall, when you had hearings, and we were presented with information from some of the same groups and people who we're hearing from today about concerns with this, kind of learning more as time went by. I had concerns about the process that was used to add this as an amendment, but now I wanted to clarify that with respect to this bill, I really am concerned about changing the purpose of this task force. It's, as I've learned more about this, our current status in Minnesota, I'm really concerned that the task force be able to pursue a plan that will help us plan for an end to the subminimum wages, and I think that's the right thing to do, so that all the individuals with disabilities, as the ARC's letter states, no matter their disability type and support needs, deserve the opportunity to explore, find, and keep jobs and careers that provide personal fulfillment. So I think that the goal of the current language will take us to the place that we need to get to. I think that as evidence that what we're doing right now isn't getting us there. You know, we know that based on the other information in one of the handouts and what Mr. McCord and Ms. Holden have stated, we are you know, only 11% of the people who have intellectual disabilities in Minnesota are doing integrated work compared to 21% nationally. I mean, we really need to work on this. And the point of the task force is not to leave anybody behind. So I think their work will be fruitful in developing a plan. The recommendations then will be brought back to the legislature, and we'll have the information about how this can be moved forward in a way that all people will have a choice or an option to do the kind of work that they're interested in or participate in activities that they feel are fulfilling. And so I'm not supportive of changing the language of the task force at this time. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think every committee hearing we learned something. I was unaware about Ms. Grom's point about that the reason we could pay for this with the special money was because it was moving something forward. But at the same time, I wish we could have had public hearings, because we would have added a couple sentences saying respecting the needs of those individuals who are going to be dependent on something different than total independent work. And that's what I hear from the folks at home. So there's no disagreement from me, Senator Wickland and Mr. McCourt and Ms. Holden and the rest about the need. I think 21% is horrible. Senator Hoffman and I spent a whole year working on independence. We mean it. We mean it. But I don't, it just the thought of the pain, we didn't, this wasn't even meant to be a full hearing on this. It's good to put the time in. We didn't bring 3 parents and workers who are enjoying the opportunity that's been availed to them by someplace in Morris, Minnesota, where it's their dream come true. They love to go, and it's their best opportunity. So anyway, I appreciate the discussion. It's not over. This is going to 2 more committees. Senator Uckey renews his motion that Senate file, whatever this was, 3408, as amended, be recommended to pass and be moved on to state government. Everybody understand that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Thank you.
No.
The motion prevails. Off it goes. Thank you for a really good discussion. Senator Nelson, we're going to spend 5 minutes on your bill, and then we're going to go to Mr. Rarick. So you can do it from there if you like, Senator Nelson. And I know you have a testifier, which I totally want to respect them being here. And I hope that just for the viewers at home, and there's, Senator Hoffman, there are so many viewers at home, appreciate that, you know, we try to figure out the schedule, but then we don't want to short any discussion. So anyway, so Senator Nelson moves 3010 to be in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 3010, increasing access to behavioral health homes services for Minnesotans. Thank you. I would move that forward, Mr. Chair. And committee members, I do want to thank my co-sponsors, bipartisan bill here with Senator Hoffman and Senator Wickland. Members, Senate File 3010 is legislation aimed at improving and sustaining the delivery of behavioral health home services. That's that integrated, multidisciplinary, team-based model designed to support coordination of care for children and adults with mental illness. Just a note on the bill language, just to direct you, the substantial change proposed in the bill can be found on lines 3.3 through 3.10. The changes in the remainder of the bill are suggested by Senate counsel are aimed at simply clarifying the current statutory language. So you'll want to look there at page 3. We know that behavioral health homes, sometimes referred to as BHHs or CBHHs, are one of the key components of our state's continuum of mental health services. And we know that it's a continuum that's more important now than ever, as Minnesotans have gone through these challenging times with the pandemic. The legislation was brought to me by a statewide coalition of providers who offer this critical mental health services in their communities across the state. I'm sure you're aware of those in your district. Members, I won't take the time, but I would urge you to look at the letters of support that are found in your committee folders. I'm going to just give you a few of those that have come in. You can read them for yourself. But the Minnesota Association of Community Mental Health Programs supports this legislation and asks for your support. People Incorporated Mental Health Services have sent a letter asking for our support, as has the Guild, the South Central Human Relations Center, the Woodland Centers providing hope, inspiring courage, and Vale Place, just to name a few, and the Human Development Center, and I'll mention one more for you here. As I said, that Woodland Center. So, members, this is essential to making sure that these community-based behavioral health services are available for people who need them. I urge the committee members to read those letters. I want you to know that this legislation would require the Minnesota Department of Human Services to work with the stakeholders, including the providers of the services, to establish a single statewide reimbursement rate for our behavioral health home services.
Okay,
I
Senator.
ask for your support.
Yeah, no, so I don't intend this is the full hearing on this. This is
Okay.
like the early policy thing. I wanted to at least honor your testifier who's come, and then when we get a fiscal note, we'll take up the more discussion of the bill.
thank
So
you.
this is meant to be a half hearing for those. This is like this is the teaser to come back for another hearing, Senator Nelson. So I believe you have a testifier.
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. If you would like to call Ms. Plant, the RN nurse manager of Vale Place.
Yeah, welcome, Ms. Plant, and I'm sorry for shorting you on the time, but if you could just do like 2 minutes just on the highlight of actually what the problem is we're trying to fix, why this is a problem for not a statewide rate, and then we're going to take this up again. So this is just to get a good start. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and I understand the time constraints today. The main thing I want to speak to, Vale Place, we've been doing the BHH model for 5 years now. We're one of the first programs. I'm kind of one of the front runners in the state, so we've been doing this. This model is different than many other models, like target case management and other things, because it allows professions to work together seamlessly to provide care in whatever setting somebody's in, whether that's a homeless shelter, whether that's their apartment, whether they're in a group home, wherever they are, we can provide this integrated care service. And, excuse me, the reason this is so critical right now is that so many people are falling through the gaps of the fractured healthcare system. We have people getting siloed care all over the place. Communication isn't there. This drives up the cost of healthcare. We have been doing this model for 5 years. We've seen how effective coordination can really make a big difference. And what's different about this team is that a nurse provides guidance to the case management role. We have community health workers on board, and it's a multidisciplinary approach, helping people not just with their mental health, but with all of their health needs, including those social determinants of health, which are exacerbating and triggering and creating further problems for them. So we are working across all of those things, and we're doing it all in one package deal. The main problem is that right now we're on a tiered rate. It's a tiered rate system in which the first 6 months of the service can be provided at one rate, and then after that, the rate goes down. And what we can tell you definitively from our cost study analysis this far in is that this is not a sustainable rate. In fact, really the rate that comes in the first 6 months is what we would really need to be more like the rate for the entire course of care that somebody is in the program. When that rate drops down,
All right.
We're not making ends meet.
Well, thanks. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe just in the interim, the department can explain to me why we do it that way. It doesn't make any sense. And so with that, we're going to lay the bill over. But and so, Senator Nelson, if we can I'm just interested in what a fiscal note would be, so maybe Mr. Albrecht, you can get us a fiscal note too, and so we can discuss the policy at that time. Senator Rarick, chop, chop. Anyway, so Senator Rarick is here. Welcome to the Human Services world. Senator Housley would like to move Senate File 3115 to be before us. Welcome to the committee. And there's an amendment, Senator Rarick, that you would like to have offered. Is that right? The A22-331?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Is that your amendment?
Yep.
So Senator Housley will move that. Looks like it's, let's get the bill amended and he can discuss it the way it is. So everybody see the 330 amendment? All those in favor of that say aye. Aye. Opposed? There being 2 ayes and no nays, the amendment's adopted. Senator Rarick, welcome to the committee, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Senate File 3115 is a bill to try to reduce paperwork. We talk about this a lot at the legislature, whether it's teachers, nurses, what have you. Many of our folks are out there spending a lot of their time doing paperwork instead of doing the job intended. This bill is specifically intended for paperwork in regards to child care protection cases. And the amendment that was adopted was just to change dates. This bill has been around for a little while, so we're asking for this plan to be put in place by the end of the year 2024. I know there's some pushback that there needs to be a longer time frame. I just want to remind the committee members that this is just talking about putting the plan in place. This is not about instituting the reduction of paperwork. So I believe 1.5 years is plenty of time to develop the plan, and then we can go from there. But with that, I would like to turn the testimony over to my testifier who can share some experiences in this area.
And Senator Rarick, do you have 3 testifiers altogether? Are all 3 of those individuals wanting to testify? Ms. Jarvis, Ms. Foss, and Ms. Rancourt, are they just here to?
I believe we're going to have just one. The others are here to help with any technical questions if needed.
Oh, I appreciate that. At least we got their names mentioned on TV. It's like, hey, I was on TV. Okay, and are you Ms. Jarvis?
I am.
Well, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Chair Abler and members of the committee, good afternoon, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak today regarding this necessity to reduce administrative and paperwork requirements. My name is Beth Jarvis. I've been in child protection for 22 years. I spent 15 years in the field and 7 years as a supervisor. And I'm going to talk today about the most important reason for my efforts here, and that's children. I have been in child protection, as I said, for 22 years. I've also worked with SSIS since its implementation. And over the last 2 decades, SSIS has grown exponentially, as have the technology problems that go along with it. This requires our workers to spend significant more time at their computers completing administrative work, and less time is available to spend with the families we are working with. When a child tragedy occurs, one of the first questions to be asked is, was Child Protective Services involved? And if so, people want to know how we failed this child. Part of our job is to assist families in getting services to address their needs, developing safety plans within a family system, trying to reduce the need for out-of-home placement, and keeping families together. Let me remind DHS of what we've learned and what we know in social work and our practice. That services themselves does not equal safety. What reduces safety risks is the relationships that can be built with the families we work with. Every time DHS adds another administrative requirement for documentation is more time taken away from our work with families. So let me give you the answer to the question of how Child Protective Services fails families, fails children. We fail by not having the time to do social work, by not having the time to build relationships with families, with children, so that we can better assess safety and identify the needs of the family. With the complexities of individual and family needs today, With increased mental health needs and the explosion of drug addiction due to the opioid crisis, families require increased support to address these complexities. This cannot be achieved with the existing level of administrative and paperwork requirements. Not in any of my education and continued learning has best practice been identified as spending 80% of my time in front of my computer doing administrative work. What has been identified in research and practice is the importance of building relationships, getting to know and getting to understand a family, a person. We don't need a task force to determine where we fail our children and come up with more documentation requirements. What we need is time. Time to see families, to see children, time to build relationships, and support our families and communities. We also need to take care of our social workers, our frontline workers who have one of the toughest jobs there is. I have an amazing group of social workers who go above and beyond every day. They shouldn't have to spend their weekends doing work on their computers just to keep up with the administrative and paperwork requirements. Although they are directed to not do this work at home and on the weekends, they do, because if they don't, the stress becomes debilitating. This isn't time they get compensated for. This is free time they are giving to the county, to DHS. We need to do better for our social workers. The level of stress in this very difficult job with just working with the complexities within the families are compounded by the amount of administrative work that is required to be done and frequently duplicated within the SSIS system. This change needs to happen now and not 3 years from now. I would just like to end by thanking Senator Rarick for his support. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And we have Ms. Summerfield from DHS who would like to offer some comments. What's that? So is she here? Hi. Hello, Jennifer.
Yes, hello,
Welcome.
Senator Abe.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, members of the committee. Yeah, I am actually here just to answer questions if needed, but I will address the issue. But I can address while I'm here, if you don't mind. I can certainly address the issue of when we can complete this report by and submit it to the legislature.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah. Why can't you do it yesterday? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Summerfield.
Perfect. So we can't do it yesterday, and we cannot do it by 2024, January 15th, because this is a very complicated process. We acknowledge that actually this might be a, while we're neutral, it's a really good opportunity for us to be able to go through SSIS, which is our Social Services Information System, to make sure that all of the screens and all of the forms and the documents that we use are serving our social workers and our children and our families as best as they can possibly do that. But SSIS is a big, complicated system. It's been in operation since 1999. We've added on to it over the years. And to get this work done will be a significant project of mapping out how each page aligns with state and federal law to meet state and federal requirements and funding, making sure we're not making changes that will impact funding. So it will be a lot of work to pull this all together. We will need to hire an outside contractor to do a lot of this work. And as we've talked about, I think in the past, you know that it takes us a while to be able to get through the RFP and contracting process, which will not leave us with enough time to be able to do that report by the date that's in the amendment. We have requested that it be moved to January 15th of 2025.
My goodness. Ms. Summerfield, I've got a, you know, we've talked a lot, and I always am free with my advice, whether it's valuable or not to you. I have a thought. I've got 3 people in this #1 rated auditorium right now who could offer you 4 ideas about how to make it work better. I've got a whole army in Anoka County. I know some people in Hennepin County. Got some people in Wright County. That if you just talked to them and came up with 20 ideas, it could be like so streamlined you wouldn't believe it, and it would be awesome. I just have to push back on you about that. So I think there's a huge amount of expertise, I think, in the world of the managers at DHS. And I'm just going to object this hiring contractors for everything. People that come in from wherever, from New York City or somewhere, to try to figure out how we do stuff here. I just don't think it's working. Anyway, that's the editorial comment you didn't pay for. Senator Nelson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, just to the timeline, that does seem excessive, 2 years. But I would say there's something I was missing as I was reading your bill, Senator Rarick, but I think our previous testifier may have mentioned it, which I think would be good to have in the language itself. And that is a report submitted to the legislature. As I was reading the language, it appears to me that there will be the establishment of this, there will be a plan, proposed changes, proposed timeline, procedures for soliciting input. And then the it doesn't say what will happen, though. And then it does say that the procedures will include a method for incorporating the input into implementation. That's a little different than having the legislature approve something. And so I think the clarity should not be that there is the council that, or the, I think you called it a council, the council should determine these things and then implement them. What I'm missing is hearing that a report will come to the legislature. And so I don't think that was your intention, to bypass the legislature, but maybe that's something to consider as your bill moves forward.
Okay, let's just, you can take that offline as well. I think it's a good comment. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Rarick. Always a good idea to listen to the people in your community and try to bring a solution to the legislature. From Ms. Sommerfeld, and this can be offline as well, but for the members of this committee, the Department of Human Services is undergoing a major IT rebuild, redesign, and I guess I haven't paid close enough attention to it to know if the SSIS system is part of that redesign. And so I think that would be useful to know where in that redesign SIS fits, because if we're going to redo an entire technology platform and spend as much money as it appears we're spending, I think everything should click together a little bit better.
Ms.
And
Sommerfeld, you can answer that
Ms. Sommerfeld,
question,
if you
please.
could help me
Peter will.
understand.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Senator Benson, I don't have an answer right now as to how this ties in with some overall work that we are doing. I do know that we have long desired to take our SSIS system and move it into what's called a CWIS system, which I'm not going to be able to go into details on because it involves IT, which is not my specialty. But there are upgrades that we do need to make to that system overall, which would be part of the work that we'd be doing in this plan, would be making sure that whatever changes are made to address paperwork are compatible and would work should we update to a CWIS system in the future.
Senator Benson.
And Ms. Sommerfeld, thank you. If you could get back to us as to where SSIS fits in the overall IT timeline. And just a reminder to folks at the department, if you need legislative change, please don't just build a system that duplicates what already exists. If there are efficiencies that we can learn from the counties who actually have to do the work, from other states who might be more efficient, this is the time to make those changes. And I'm not going to speak to whether this timeline is appropriate, but if we're doing a massive IT project, now is the time to listen to the counties about how we make this paperwork process more efficient.
Thanks, and Senator Benson, I'll make my comment, and then Senator Rarick can just get the last word here. We have so many processes in government, not just DHS, and even the legislature. So there's some things that just want to just make me just be shocked about how clunky we do it. We do it clunky. Admit that. We all could do things more smoothly. But the people that have to suffer through that are the staff that we've attracted who have decided to make this their career and really care about the work. And the people who are relying on them are the children who have been maltreated or harmed some way, and the parents who want to not be found wrongly guilty of doing something, and a process that works. And that comes by experience and keep retaining people and just the 20-year knowledge that we get. And if we're running off people that are really good workers because they got to work on Sunday instead of going to the lake with their kid, we're missing the boat, and we're going to cause harm. And so I'm Senator Rarick, keep working on this. And maybe we need to decide there's some reporting that just is pointless. And maybe the department's seeing this as every form has to be redesigned to be simpler to fill out. But I think part of your answer is to listen to the people that do this every day and query them in some way about which of these reports is nobody even reading, and which ones are we doing that are so important to check a box somewhere. We have become a government that checks boxes and forgets about the people at the end. And so it's too expensive. There's not enough people to do it. It's happening in substance abuse and group homes and everywhere else in this committee, and we just watch the challenges that are before us, and we want to grieve. And Senator Murphy, do you want to go ahead? You're going to get the second to last word.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm, really into my timing today, obviously. I'm grateful, Senator Rarick, that you're bringing this forward, and your testimony means a lot. And I'm listening and paying attention. I also think it's important that we remember that the policies that we pass often drive the result of the bureaucracy. And I recall early when we were both in the House, Senator Abler, you and I brought something forward dealing with childcare and regulations and peas, a burned finger and peas. And before the bill was even out of committee, it was laid on the table because it raised too many questions on the part of legislators in the committee. Like, what are we talking about? We can't possibly politically touch the issue of making sure that childcare is safe by amending any of the rules, even to think about it. So I hear you in the consideration about the bureaucracy and the rules, but I think that it is incumbent on us, as well as the bureaucracy, to make sure that the policies that we're passing don't result in a bureaucracy that is uncaring, right? Okay, thank you.
I couldn't agree with you more. So we have to respond to something that happens, and now we have a rule about, the temperature of cooking peas, and where somebody has to record, and there's a report no one ever watches. And so, so, Ms. Sommerfeld, maybe we're asking the wrong question. But the question we have to ask is, how can we take the limited workforce we have that's so experienced and protect the most kids for the least amount of pointless effort? And if we have to repeal some law, then we should agree on a bipartisan way. We're not going to politicize this. We're just going to get rid of this little law that could be sensitive but really is not worth anything. And the process we're doing could be improved. But my main point that I'm sure you agree, the people that know this, the people that know how to improve nursing aren't the administrators. The people who know how to improve nursing are the people at the bedside. And so in the bedside here is all these amazing folks that have chosen social work and whatever their titles they have to protect our people. So Senator Rarick, you get the last word, and we're going to lay the bill over, and you're going to keep working on it, and we want to pass something out of here that actually accomplishes something more than just adding more paper to the pile. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and that is exactly it. I know my folks at Pine County have worked with a number of other counties trying to work with DHS to reduce this paperwork and asking them to engage, to be part of the process to figure out what can we do to reduce the amount of time that these people are sitting in front of their computer screens checking boxes. The other thing that was mentioned, and a lot of times the way this system is, they'll spend an hour inputting information, there's a glitch and it disappears, and they're back inputting the same information. So the system itself does need improving, but we just want the department to engage with the counties, and the counties have been working with the tribes and other stakeholder groups to say, what can we do? This is what we're asking, and this is just, again, it's just asking them to engage and develop a plan. It's not even saying that the system has to be upgraded, it has to be made less clunky. It's let's develop the plan to say exactly what you were saying, Mr. Chair, what is truly needed, information that should be relayed on to the agencies, should be relayed on to the legislature, and let's stop asking these people to report things that no one's ever going to look at. Let's let them spend their time with the kids. That's what the bill is for, and I appreciate the committee taking the time to hear this.
Very well said, and we're a state where there's partnerships, tribal county in this situation and anyway, and then DHS with the tribes and the counties. So let's keep that going strong. Excellent hearing, I think very fitting of this hearing, Senator Rarick and your folks, and the testifiers were amazing. And so with that, we're going to call it a day. Next week, that Thursday is going to be a blockbuster, so you'll want to watch that. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.